Hey guys, welcome back to the Machiavellian Monkeys podcast. There's two bros studying the human animal, the political animal. Right now we're studying Machiavelli's The Prince. We're going to take on chapters 4 through 7 today. Should be a fun one. Learning about taking dominion of different kingdoms by one's own ability or by the arms of others or by fortune. Some cool ideas. Real quick, you find us on YouTube or most of the podcasting websites. You find us on Spotify, on Google,
Podbean,
YouTube. Podbean is our central hub. You know, like, subscribe, anything, whatever. Just come hang out with us. We're happy to have you here.
Hell yeah!
Enjoy this little book study of Machiavelli's The Prince. I'm your host, Aaron James, sitting here with my best bro,
Lurker Mario. Welcome back.
Hey, where can people find you, man?
They can follow me on Twitter at Lurker Mario.
All right, he should have some brutal stuff coming up.
Yeah,
he's that kind of guy. He likes that real visceral Game of Thrones kind of shit, which is why we're here. All right, so let's just jump right in with the first chapter, titled in my volume here, because we're reading different editions, so they're written slightly different. Sometimes they'll say principality, or they'll say
monarchy,
interchangeably. We're going for the idea. We're not going to get lost in the words.
Right.
We want the fucking principles, man, of how people are. The Machiavellian monkey lives. So this chapter 4 is why the kingdom of Darius, which is the Persian kingdom occupied by Alexander, did not rebel against the successors of Alexander after his death. There's a little paraphrase just to make it simpler to understand. And this chapter was very simple, very short, and it was going in an examination of centralized states versus what I would call feudal states.
Right. Yeah, like whether having one person control the entirety of the country, and then like what would you say? Kind of like granting power to local people.
Well, they have a centralized administration underneath the monarch, the prince, or the king.
Yeah, versus where you would see like in Game of Thrones, and this is actually like the whole root cause of the war in the first 4 books is a bunch of different parts of the country with different feudal lords and people like coming to their side and their aid, rather than just like having the one central power.
So the examination of the centralized state is the Persian state. So the kingdom of Darius, I think, we haven't gotten to this part of history yet. We might do it in the future. He conquered his territory, and he put his administration throughout the entire thing, so the whole state was centralized.
Right.
Whereas in France, which was the other examination, which is a feudal state, is a bunch of what he called barons. So you have the king, and then underneath the king, he has control of the entire territory, but the local territory is controlled by its own
barons
bloodline, noble bloodline. So the people are loyal to the bloodline, whereas in the kingdom of Darius, they were loyal to Darius and just had the administration ruling over them instead of their own personal ruler, who they are. Machiavelli uses words like are very attached to and grew up with them.
Oh yeah, loved of the people kind of stuff.
It's had me thinking a lot about like symbolic statehood in a way. Like if you take out the noble bloodline, it's because that those people, those names give you hope, and they're tied back to the old kingdom. You erase the bloodline,
right? You
erase any anchor back to the kingdom, unless someone comes up and declares himself a descendant of that old bloodline,
right?
And is it true? Does it really matter? It's a symbolic gesture of, I am part of the old state. I'm here to bring back the glory of X, and they're using what I would call a very powerful form of magic in doing that.
And you see this a lot in storytelling. So clearly, this work by Machiavelli is like affected the way that we even think about rulership, or at least hereditary rulership. Like in what is it? In Game of Thrones, they try and get Jon Snow after all the deaths, all the young wolf is killed, Eddard's killed, they think Bran's killed, they think Arya and Sansa are dead. And then when Stannis goes to the wall, he tells Jon Snow, it's like, I'm going to call you Jon Stark, and you're going to come with me, and we're going to retake Winterfell. Or in another good one, if you've played Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. In Radiant Dawn, they're trying to regain control over Galea, I want to say, and they find like a lost heir, blood prince,
the last scion.
yeah, who's gonna like reunite the people and come back and like gain control or whatever, and push out the new oppressors, which were actually the good guys in the first game. So pretty interesting stuff.
So in this chapter, we have a centralized state, as in Persia, Kingdom of Darius, versus the Kingdom of France, which is a feudal state. And what was the significance here is that to conquer a centralized state is going to be much more difficult because you're facing the centralized power of the entire kingdom. And he says
initially.
It's going to be harder to get an in there because even if you could corrupt one of the administration, it's
just a figurehead. It's just like a town bot, like a mayor or whatever.
Well, they can't stir up a lot of trouble because they have to fight. They have to corrupt like a critical mass in the entire system to get something to work. So corrupting one dude's like, all right, I can help you out, but like, there's all these other people that are still loyal to Darius. So he says it's going to be more difficult to conquer
initially,
but much easier to hold. Once you take out the prince. And of course, he always recommends wiping the bloodline, so that people don't have anything to go back to.
Yeah, it's something I do love about this book so far, and I'm assuming it'll continue, is that there's always like referencing back to the foundation knowledge. It's like he laid down the foundations in the first chapter, and he goes back to them and elaborates on what it is that he's talking about. But also another fun fact for the Kingdom of Darius, Alexander the Great, when he came in, what was it? Alexander's advisors suggested that after his initial victories in the west of the Persian Empire, he suggested that he go for the killing blow, and then Alexander goes opposite of that, and he starts to take away all of their money. So he goes down the coast, he goes down Jerusalem, and then he takes all the essentially the infrastructure. If you're playing StarCraft, it's like attacking the drones, you know, so he takes all the harbor cities, and so he's limiting resources back to the capital, and he's
weakening the entire state.
Yeah, before he goes in, and by the time he goes and faces Darius and defeats him in battle, like, he's got a weak, disheveled, wasted army.
Yeah, who was ready to rebel because they don't have enough food and supplies and stuff. So centralized state, harder to take on and conquer, easier to hold.
Yes.
Considering you take out the bloodline. On the opposite side, with the feudal state, he says it's easier to conquer, or at least to get in, because all you got to do is find the one lord or baron
who's like disgruntled,
who's looking to get up. I mean, he says this about men in the one of his earlier chapters, where it's in the nature of man. Natural difficulty is men change masters willingly, hoping to better themselves.
Right.
And this belief makes them take up arms against their ruler. So you find the one baron who's like, I want to take control back of my own kingdom. So I'm going to bring in this other power
and help me depose of this king or ruler.
So theory is easier to do, but once you have the kingdom, the entire kingdom of France, you think. But now it's like
now you've got if there was 10 guys and one guy helped you, now you've got 9 dudes that hate your guts.
Well, now you got 10 dudes who are easy. Like, now I'm back in control of my territory, and if they want to cooperate, they can. And basically, Machiavelli says this is just going to create an infinite amount of headaches to try and like
squash everything.
Because then you have to take out each baron on its own. It's going to waste your resources, and another, and it's just.
And the more you do that, you're going to also be like, you're going to appear more like an invader as well. Especially if you start like changing the culture and stuff. It's kind of like what we were doing in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Deposing everybody, or the United States, deposing the areas and then bringing Western influence, and then ultimately getting attacked like 9/11 or whatever.
So what you're saying is that we will never hold the Middle East because of the tribal nature of the area.
Exactly. And even if we put in false rulers or democratically elected people, like, without eradicating
you'd have to centralize the state and then take it over, and it's a lot. It's more work. Like it costs too much. It's expensive. So instead, we just go there to hold the oil.
Yeah.
And fuck all else. You know,
we've got the hard assets.
all that stuff. Yeah, definitely. They get the paper money. So enjoy peace. All right. So that's basically chapter 4. Centralized states versus feudal states. The 5th chapter is the way to govern cities or dominions that, previous to being occupied, lived under their own laws. So this is taking over, or how I put it, how to dominate free cities.
Yeah, which, what is it? Niccolo calls republics.
Yeah. And he gave 3 ways to do that. You got them down?
What is it? Despoil, so destroy the power, go in, and you just fucking kill it, right? So you're going to kill all the congressmen. Yeah. Take it all.
Take the balls off, man.
Boom. And then, what is it? Residency. Oh, so we've discussed this before. Like, once you take over the area, you go in, you establish it so that when problems start to arise, you can act accordingly, right? And then take tribute under light governance. So when he talks about this, I believe he's talking about Rome and Sparta and how they're like, okay, look, we own y'all now, and y'all are just going to pay us, and everything's going to be fine. But ultimately, they ended up losing power because they weren't established in the area. And so the people used to being free, they missed that freedom, they missed their way of life, and they're going to be holding on to that resentment and that dream for longer than people who have already been ruled and are used to being ruled. And you can see that like in America, again, during the Revolutionary War. They're over here and essentially living in an anarcho-capitalist society. Well, I guess not capitalist because, the Industrial Revolution hadn't taken place yet. But they're living like what they want to have, their freedom of religion, their self-sufficiency, their rugged individualism. And then they start getting, the king starts to like impose more and more power, and that causes the resentment and the uprising that we had over here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like at the end of the chapter how it says, not having their old prince, this is like a country lived under like a centralized ruler. They cannot unite in choosing one from among themselves to take over that title. And they do not know how to live in freedom, so that they are slower to take arms. And a prince can win them over with greater facility and establish himself securely. But in republics, there is greater life, greater hatred, and more desire for vengeance. They do not and cannot cast aside the memory of their ancient liberty, so that the surest way is either to lay them waste or reside in them.
Right.
And the key point in this chapter says, if you want to take control of a free city, despoil it.
Yeah.
You got to take away its power to where it can't even be a problem anymore.
Yeah, to where it's just like a hollow shell of its former self.
Definitely.
That was a short-ass chapter. I think that was like 3 paragraphs or something like that.
Yeah, definitely, man. Short and sweet, destroy the republics.
And move on.
Yeah, and he says if you can, like, be good to them, citizens will defend their city better than subjects. So, because they know freedom, probably have, more access to arms or whatever. Yeah,
and I believe he goes on. So he also uses Rome. He uses how Rome failed, and then he also goes on to show how Rome succeeded with like I think Carthage. What was it? Carthage and Syracuse. I forget who all he was talking about, but essentially he was like the Romans came in and they destroyed the previous principalities in their entirety, and then after enough time had passed, the citizens there, the next generation and the generation after, they only knew Roman rules, so they're like, we're Romans, so it's like a whole culture shift.
Well, yeah, you got it's indoctrination, bro.
Yeah.
You put in your public schools, man, and the kids grow up loving the flag.
And then
pledging allegiance.
Yeah, and having that like imperial protection, like, man, life's good or whatever. I mean, I understand Roman, they didn't have they didn't really have a middle class. It was like upper class and plebs. So, but that's why people would join the military, because if you join the military, they'd give you land, and then you can and then if you went on a tour, you could plunder, because plundering wasn't unethical back then, and so you'd probably come back with riches and slaves
Yeah.
and all the good shit and be like, all right, work my land, motherfuckers.
Hell yeah, man.
Different times, man.
Well, I
The
mean,
world was so brutal. Like, it's just so
are we
interesting.
plundering oil right now?
Yeah.
Not so different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now it's just corporate power versus laissez-faire. I guess.
Well, I guess Rome would have been the corporate power.
Yeah, Rome was the corporation, right?
Yeah. And then we get to the meteor chapters. Not meteor as in falling sky stones, but as in full of juicy carne.
Of new dominions which have been acquired by one's own arms and ability.
Yes, this had some fun quotes in it.
I think this first quote right here. A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who are most excellent. I think when he's talking about this, he's talking about how most people can't. So if you're starting a free state from scratch, right? Very few have been able to do it like successfully. And so a lot of people who try afterwards are unoriginal, and so they have to try and follow, like I think he talks about Romulus, Cyrus,
Moses, Theseus. Yeah.
and how they got their stuff. But if you don't have exceptional ability, see, I think he argues that you need ability to start a state and to keep a state, because if you get a state through luck, like inheritance, or I guess what is it, like buying at the time,
It's being in the right place. It's literally luck. Being fortunate that one, like, if you were one of the few people who went to the California gold rush early, or you bought real estate at the right time.
right?
Like someone bought Bitcoin just because, like, oh, I'm just going to do this, and ended up with millions of dollars.
Right.
Just because they were goofing off.
And then without ability, you just spend it off, squander it. I think,
Yeah.
Or similarly to, I think, was it Caligula or Nero?
I don't know, I'm not studied up on my Rome right
Well,
now.
one of them, essentially, his mother, like, helps him come to power by poisoning his father or some shit like that. And then he ends up being a terrible emperor. And so he gains the power through luck, but doesn't have the ability. And so, like, within a decade or less, he ends up murdered by the palace guard or whatever. He's like cowering, pissing himself, like hiding behind the curtains.
Yeah, I put that in the next chapter. New dominions acquired by the power of others or by fortune. And basically, he says, "Easy come, easy go."
Right.
So if you get the dominion easily, it can be taken away just as easily if you have no ability. So
yeah, great men owe nothing to fortune but the opportunity which gave them matter to be shaped into what form they saw fit, and without their powers, opportunity would have come in vain. Right.
yeah, so you just gotta be like, the reason to have ability and power, if you have it, you need to be waiting for, or I mean, you could be pursuing it, but be ready when opportunity and fortune comes knocking. That's why fortune favors the bold, because they're ready to, like, jump on it and ride the wave. You know,
Take action.
Yeah, pretty much. So get good and be prepared. So yeah, it was a very important idea. So what else? There's another part in there. Without their opportunity, their powers would have been wasted. So yeah, if you're like really good and you have no opportunity, then, you know, moot point or whatever, you wasted talent.
Yeah,
you know?
and then we're lucky living in the richest country on the planet that we have so much opportunity.
Reading this book makes me really consider, like, how lucky I am. Like, I thought it was just, being in America, it's the thing, but no, it could have been anywhere else. But not only are we in America, we're in Central Texas, just blowing up faster than anywhere right now because the Democrats are screwing up and people are seeing
the light,
that Lone Star putting off that that green light,
shining
that money.
bright.
Yeah,
a
man.
beacon of hope.
Beacon of hope, man.
And a fucking sinking ship.
Freedom and all that, man. So, yeah, no, I'm very glad. In my own magical practice, I probably set up a little tribute to Fortuna, or some personification of luck, because it's important to capitalize.
And, like, modern, what's the word? Great men break through the filter too. I'm just thinking about Francis Ngannou, who was born in a village, working in a sand mine.
It's a fighter, right?
Yeah. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. Born in a village, mining sand when he was 9 years old. He was like broke. A bunch of people told him, like when he told him he was gonna go be a boxer, like everybody in his village was like, "Oh, whatever, dude. Like, you're full of shit. You're not gonna get out of here. No one gets out of here. Like, this is what life is. Don't dream too hard." And then like he suffered for years trying to migrate illegally to Europe, and then he started knocking motherfuckers out, and now he's a millionaire, dude. There was a cool video I saw of him recently where he was back in Cameroon, and he's like on the back of a truck with his gold belt, and everybody's like, it's like a parade, dude. Like everybody's in the street, like they want to see him, they want to like touch the gold and be like, then he's setting an example too. He's like, hey man, I was from here, I made it, you can make it,
He says that.
Yeah, but I mean, but he talks about that, in his an interview where he's like, everyone's gonna give you shitty advice, like do what you're gonna do or don't, right?
Yeah.
So that's just like great men still filter through. We just have like the more opportunity, being where we are.
Well, if we want to like shift into like a not in a personal development way, but like how to live life well, this is why like discipline is very important because it maximizes your access to fortune and luck.
Yeah.
Because you show up every day, and when luck shows up or the muse shows up, bam, you're there to harvest that and be able to use your talent to the fullest potential,
right.
Hit that flow state. So if you don't show up every day, you might miss the muse because you're off jerking off or whatever.
Yeah.
As opposed to just showing up, even just for a little bit, just maybe, catch that divine wind
and having that perspective for sure. Yeah, man, I'm loving reading this book, Prince. It's savage, dude.
Yeah. There's nothing more difficult to carry out, no more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. For the reformer has enemies in all those who profit by the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in all those who would profit by the new order.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about in just the last chapter, when you're going in and taking over principality, and you go through a feudal system. You got these people to help you out, and then if you're not like, coming through with your promises and shit, like
they're ready to fall back.
Yeah,
backslide.
No problem. Be like, you know what? And some people did that notoriously well. I want to say somebody during the French Revolution, he found himself. Oh man, I want to say Rousseau, but I think that might be wrong. But somebody, he was like on every spectrum, dude. He was like with Napoleon when Napoleon was going on. He was like with the leftists when the lefts were going on. He was like always ahead, always ahead, always ahead. And like he was one of the only people that didn't get his fucking head cut off,
Smart man. Sounds like a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this is actually, I wrote in the margin of my book, this gives me hope for the United States. That some of these new crazies, man, these progressives, or whatever you want to call them, the woke people, they're going to meet a lot of resistance in the power structure.
And that's happening right now.
Yeah, corporate Democrats do not like these new populist Democrats, and no one likes the populist Republicans. So, yeah, it'll be interesting seeing where we go. But it's going to take a lot of power to, like, really change the system, and it's more like it's going to fracture anyhow.
Right. Well, yeah. It seems to me like the corporate Dems are trying to distance themselves from the woke mob so that they can use it as a tool. I think you brought this up, actually. It's like fear. They're trying to get the left to fear the woke left, because if too many people adopt it, it's going to drive all the centrists to the right, and they might lose their next election in 4 years. But I think they probably already lost their 2022 House elections. Yeah, I think it's going to be another red wave.
That would be the natural course of things, I believe.
Pendulum.
But, I mean, that naturally, but we've seen already how they fortified one election and they got away with it.
I know, dude. And they're using such elegant double speak right now with the Texas laws and stuff.
If they pack out the Supreme Court, like, the elections might be fortified
eternally.
I mean, till we fall or fracture,
Right.
you know, or civil, you know, Civil War #2.
Well, I mean,
maybe World War III. Who knows?
who knows, man? Fuck. But I think it would be better. I mean, of course, now we're just like, where's the map so that we can pretend like we're fucking ruling principalities.
I want to do
and
that
shit.
one day
Yeah.
where like map of the United States,
Boom.
the political numbers.
These people.
How would we take over the United States if we were on either side?
Well, the move, I think, would be localization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, what is it? I hate to use the word confederation, but federation.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you would do is you stop enforcing federal law, right? And we're seeing this already. I think there's 21.
nullification.
Yeah. There's 21 states that have gun-free gun sanctuaries, right? And then there's a bunch of states that are also immigrant sanctuaries, right? Migrant sanctuaries.
Yeah, and the whole state drug laws and everything too.
And so what you start doing is you start the only way that the Fed could flex is either using their small bureaus like the ATF and the FBI or whatever to try and enforce their federal law at the state level. But if the state decides that they're not going to help federal powers enforce those laws in their state, then that can like greatly neuter the enforcement power of the Fed at the local level. And then so what you do is you start getting federations within the union where we're like, okay, well, we're pro-life in these states, so we're not going to do that, and we're pro-gun in these states, so we're not going to do that. And then once that starts happening, the Fed is going to use the tool like they did with raising the drinking age. So they start withholding federal funding for like roads and shit like that.
Yeah,
but then
grants.
You can use the same thing. You can use your federation to pool resources and then continue out that way. So then you'll have the union, and then you'll have smaller unions within the union. And then, that might end up helping the communists have their Pacific Northwest or their West Coast or whatever, and the Republic being like a strong bar.
People like to talk,
Texas to
but
Canada.
when it comes to rich people putting up like money. Like hard money, when everything is like decayed, they're not going to want to stay there. They're going to go to the beautiful countryside somewhere in the red state before they spoil it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, I was talking about. I mean, yeah, I'm all for like creating new networks and stuff. That's the most important thing. But I'm talking about like sitting down. It's like if we were in the
Kings?
dominant power structure. Yeah, not if we were kings. Like what if we were like up in the presidential suite or whatever? Like talking to them.
Lobbyists.
Somewhere in there. Like how would we conquer? How would you use Antifa to take over as a pawn and like
cat's paw.
get really gritty on it? But
That's another episode.
Yeah, we'll figure that out at another time, but it could be fun. So let's see here. A couple other cool quotes from this chapter. The Medes, weak and effeminate through long peace.
Oh, yeah.
Made me think of, the United States, of course.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole, what is it that saying everybody fucking uses? Good times make weak men or some shit like that.
Well, hard men make good times make weak men make hard times.
Right.
Hard times make strong men.
Yeah, and when he's talking about the Medes, I believe, again, it's the Romans. They go in and just, crush this fat and happy populace that's not of military might, right?
Yeah, people want to talk about peaceful tribal culture. You're talking about losing cultures.
Yeah.
As long as there's you play any strategic military game, strategy game, whether board game or
they don't have
game.
military might.
If you don't have the military might,
crush.
You get rolled on. No one cares.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of the as Thomas Sowell would say, the constrained vision. They see the usefulness of having deterrence, whereas having what's the word, mutual and shared destruction or whatever.
Do people respond to incentives?
Yes. So if you've got weapons and you're like, if you fuck with us, we're gonna fucking murder you or whatever, they're like, okay, maybe not today.
People always say if they had guns in New York, everyone would be shooting each other. And that might be true for like the first
a
couple
brief
weeks.
period of time,
but then
yeah.
all of a sudden, everyone in New York would get real nice, real polite.
Because you know that shit would go down really quickly.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Or
like,
just get really cold, you know.
Yeah,
Well, that's what manners are, you know.
The
not being real to the full extent.
Yeah, versus like the utopian dream that France and England had outside of their military power structure in between World War I and II. They were like, well, if we disarm and everybody disarms, then we can all like have kumbaya and there won't be any.
That's the prisoner's
World
dilemma,
War.
you know. Or it's like two prisoners. If you sell out, like if you both don't sell each other out, you know, you get like
10 years or whatever.
10 years or whatever. If you sell out the other person,
You get 5 years.
you get let off and the other guy gets 20. And then if you both rat on each other, then you both get 10 years.
Yeah.
So like, you can't, if it's just a one-time go, like your best bet is to like, well, it's like, do you want to risk getting off, or do you want to risk, you know, I don't know,
Getting fucked
the 20
over.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
They say if you iterate that out, the best thing to do is like, you play nice the first round, and then if they play bad,
You get hard.
then you keep playing bad every time because they've already screwed you over, so you can't do that.
Right.
They've extrapolated out in like a game or whatever. And I think I read a book called Golden in the Gears, but something like that.
Yeah, I'm just saying if the idealists and the utopianists or whatever had their way, you know, Germany would have taken Europe over that much quicker.
Yeah, for real. If everyone disarmed, like Germany just roll
Rolled
in with
on
the
them.
tanks and they're like, "You're ours now."
And they rolled in on him because of divisiveness. I think, you know, Hitler talks about how the reason he kept seizing power was he knew that his enemies were, they had to deal with the republics and they had to deal with like the vision of the people and argue amongst themselves, whereas he could just take control immediately and then move forward. Similarly how Napoleon defeated the Prussians and who else? Man, it was the Prussians and God, this is gonna bother me. But basically, he's going to war with like 3 different countries, and he's like, "Oh, well, we're just gonna defeat them because they have incompetent generals because they're still having like princes and dukes and shit command their armies, and then they also have slower decision making. So like their communication up and down the power structure is slower. So he can just like maneuver quicker and just roll all over them or whatever. Kind of. It's just interesting how like it all just builds. Like people, we didn't just end up here in the 21st century.
No, we're on the bleeding edge of
A sword.
evolution and all that stuff, man. It's a whole line of thinking I could go into with the Kabbalah and stuff, but that's a
Another
whole,
podcast.
That's like a whole university
Yeah,
degree, you know. But a couple more quotes from this chapter, and I think we can wrap it up.
Right.
Another favorite of mine: all armed prophets have conquered, and unarmed ones failed.
Every single time, for sure. I think he's talking about the Jews in this one, right, with Moses.
Yeah. I guess you assume that Moses had taken up arms and stuff, but I mean, a prophet is just anyone who comes with like a message or a vision essentially. So what was the context around there? Coming off talking about it's hard to install new order. Talking about he uses do you get the word innovators a lot in your copy?
No.
I wonder what is translated there. Let's see. In case variable, whether they depend on others. So it's basically about depending on others. You don't want to depend on others when your dependence on others fails. You want to have the military might to keep people.
You want to be able to defend yourself.
Oh yeah, he says it's easy to change someone's mind at the outset, but hard to keep them in that same state of mind if you can't deliver. You know, so it's best to have weapons to keep them in line.
He talks about that, and he's like, if you can't do it with words, crush them with military might.
Yeah. And then to me, the end of this chapter, basically two ideas. The keys to power is friends and soldiers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you have any concluding thoughts?
No,
I think we'll leave Cesare for the next episode.
Yeah.
So we can go of new dominions acquired by the power of others by fortune, along with
wickedness
on those who attained the position of prince by wickedness or villainy, and then a couple others to round out the chapters on principalities and dominions, and then there's a few more, but we'll get there. It should be fun. This book's been a great trip, man. Just
absolutely.
Reading through it and been like,
and seeing all the connections, like, well, in fiction, like in video game stories, fantasy fiction, and then also like the historical relevance. Like, this would be just as good information to bestow upon like Japanese feudal lords, or
you can use this in a corporation, bro.
Yeah,
like. You go get promoted into a new department and you conquer it in a way.
Right.
And you have to look out. Who are the strong people here? Who are the weak people? Become friends and protect the weak people.
Yeah, it's just so interesting.
Keep the strong people's power in check or diminish it so you can have, greater dominion.
Right. Yeah, and it's just crazy how this is considered, Machiavellianism is considered part of the Dark Triad.
Well... the Dark Triad is where you get the cluster of three traits, where you have like Machiavellianism, which is like manipulation and deception, along with narcissism, which is complete self-aggrandizement, and then psychopathy,
right,
which is like no empathy,
emotion,
or connection to others. So you only care about yourself. You don't feel any kind of stress or bad about destroying others. And then if you
use deceit and wickedness,
and if you have the intelligence to do so, like you're just a force of nature, destroying everyone in your way,
right,
with no care. So yeah, it's a scary thing.
Yeah,
and the only reason
it's a good tool.
I think I read it in the introduction. We haven't got there yet, but the only reason that this stuff works is because the general nature of man is good. Because if everyone was like this, no one would trust anybody.
Yeah.
So I think they said hypocrisy is the price vice pays to virtue. Because you can't be a hypocrite if you fuck over everybody, no one's gonna play with you anymore, and you've lost all of your connections.
But at the same time, it also talks about the wickedness of man, and like how you can't just be honky dory with everybody, because that just opens you up to being taken advantage of.
Yeah, you gotta keep your head in the game, man. I guess. Yeah, no matter where you're at, you got to keep your head in the game. Don't want to escape and get into escapism and stuff. Like, head in the game is the most important. I think I was reading this in one of my magic books, but yeah, you can't check. If you want to do something with your life, like, you can't afford to check out too much, because once again, if you check out, fortune's going to pass you by. You're going to miss those opportunities where you could really make great impacts on your life. And the shit compounds over time. So if you're on,
it's an investment.
It's compounding interest. It's exponential, whereas if you fuck off a lot, you're only going to hit those breaks.
Yeah, and those fuck offs are going to be your investment. You're like, oh, okay, I invested in 500 hours of Skyrim, which was great, by the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. It's good to have hobbies and stuff, but like, you got to put in, at least a little bit of work every day. So that, like I said, build the roads before you need them and stuff like that, But
until next time.
Yeah, until next time. It's 3 chapters of The Prince. Next time we're going to talk about Cesare Borgia and obtaining one's dominion by villainy. Yeah, it's a juicy, brutal chapter. Talking about a conquest of Romagna and dealing with the French and Spanish and the Pope. And all kinds of like good, intriguey goodness and Game of Thrones type stuff. So be prepared for that kind of talk next week. I have been your host, AJ.
Lurker Mario.
All right, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.